Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. We're excited about this program. Our friends from Hickory and Catawba County are here to talk about growth and challenges. They seem to have some challenges with growth up there, so we'll probably tell them how we manage it all so well here in Gaston. But to get started, I do want to acknowledge several of our board members who are in the room today. So we have Dr. Jeff Booker, and who else? Robin Lang as well, and I think a couple others were not able to make it, so thank you for joining us today. Also, elected officials in the House, we have a couple of council members from the City of Gastonia. So Councilmember Koutsoupias and Councilmember Gallagher, who was just standing right here. He vanished, okay? Thank you, Caramont, for your table sponsorship for today's event, and also for Responsive Technologies, who is the breakfast sponsor, and I want to introduce Jim Lebrecht to say a few words this morning.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, we're excited. It's not about AI today. We'll probably come up, but I'm Jim Lebrecht with Responsive. We're honored to be the sponsor of today's event, working at GBA. Whether you're redeveloping your business, your city, your town, we've been an active part with the municipalities here and private businesses. So anything technology, whether it's IT, infrastructure, consulting, AI, cybersecurity, we pretty much covered the full spectrum, been here 42 years. So again, thanks for allowing us the opportunity to serve you and learn more about Hickory, I guess, going from furniture and NASCAR to a new world. So thank you again for allowing us to be a part of today's program.
And so I'm Pat Mumford, I'm with the GBA, and the way we run these sessions is to attempt to paint sort of the big picture challenges of whatever the issue and the topic is of the program. And so for us, this is about growth, and it actually came out of a request from a Q&A from the previous breakfast meeting we had a couple months ago, where Susie Lewis, one of our board members, asked the question of, hey, with all this challenge of growth, don't you think we could learn from some surrounding communities that are going through it as well? And we thought, absolutely, that's a great idea. So we noodled for way too long. Sorry, Megan. I noodled for way too long on what would be the best way to talk about this issue. And so we dabbled with, do we have 3 or 4 municipalities represented? And we thought, no, let's go ahead and have a single community represented with the various players in that community that came together to collaborate to, one, identify the big needs facing their community, and then figure out how to come together and do something about that. And so reached out to my friend Lindsay at the Catawba County Chamber, who runs the chamber there, and said, hey, could you all help us and bring together a group to talk about not just Hickory. You'll hear a lot about Hickory today, but it's all about Catawba County as well, and how you're dealing with growth. And so the Catawba County has 8 municipalities in it. We have 12 seated in Gaston, so very similar in that regard for a lot of different players, a lot of unique communities. They have 3 school systems where we have 1 school system. Dr. Booker could tell us which one's better or not. They have 321 and I-40. We have 321 and 85. They have growth, residential growth, as well as industrial growth. So a lot of similarities to how we might learn about this growth challenge. So it seems to be growth is the topic every time we come up here. But what I'd like to do is ask the panelists to come up. So as I mentioned, Lindsay Keisler is the president and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County. Meg Nealon did a lot of work with Hickory and her role with LandDesign. She now runs her own firm, NealonPlanning. And then Yaidee Fox is the assistant city manager in the City of Hickory. So to start, how about we just, you all do a little bit better introduction of yourselves maybe, and then Yaidee's got a little presentation to run through. I think we'll set the stage for what Catawba and Hickory were facing and how they came about, how they came together to solve challenges. So one challenge for you all is, I hope you can learn something today and then take it with you when you leave. So challenge yourself, right? What am I going to do as a business leader to help be a part of the solution here in Gaston? Right, so Yaidee, you want to start just a quick introduction?
Hi everyone, I'm Yaidee Fox. I am an assistant city manager with the City of Hickory, and I've been with the city, this is my 23rd year. So I say that in saying that I've been with the city from well before we started going through some challenges, right whenever the recession started happening. We actually went through a couple of years where we didn't do any raises to where we are now. So to be able to be a part of the community and seeing it grow and come together has been huge for me. I'm over a variety of different departments and projects, but most of the things that I do is related to the community. A lot of it is economic development, but it's also a variety of different services like library, communications and marketing, lobbying and legislative affairs, and special projects.
All right, good morning. I'm Meg Nealon with NealonPlanning. I am both a landscape architect and a planner, and I've been fortunate to have spent my entire career in North Carolina. I was in Charlotte before I married my husband and moved to Hickory, which has been great. But one of the things that I have loved about my career is spending time in our North Carolina communities and working through the issues of growth and creating those visions for the future that puts people on the right path. But I've been very fortunate, and then over the course of my career, I've had opportunities to work in Gaston County, starting with the comprehensive plan a long, long time ago. And Carolina Thread Trail, that initiative was something I got to work on as well, and then more recently working with Josh Watkins on the Cramerton plan. So in those projects, I've had several introductions to and have seen the evolution of Gaston County and some of the things that are really special about Gaston County. And sometimes you have to be a little bit on the outside to see some of these things that are so special about this community. So it's both your natural environment, your downtowns, and so on. So I think those are the kinds of things that make my career so rewarding, is getting to be a part of those solutions and see the evolution.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lindsay Keisler. I have the privilege of being the president and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County. I want to say a special thank you to my friend Pat for your leadership, as well as the invitation for us to come and talk about our story. I want to also tell you things you will not hear this morning, right? You're not going to hear that we have it all figured out. We are on a journey, just like you're on a journey, and we hopefully will share some things that we've learned along the way, but we're certainly have not reached our destination. We're continuing to push forward for forward momentum and economic prosperity. I think ultimately our goal is the same, right? Creating more and better opportunity for the people who live, work, learn, raise families, and even play in your community. And so I also want to say a special thank you to each of you. So I, as leading the chamber in Catawba County, have the privilege of convening rooms like this for business, members from business, members from local government, members from education and healthcare, as well as our nonprofit community, come together to solve community issues. You know, what is good for business is good for economic prosperity overall. And so I really want to commend you and thank you for your community leadership, for showing up into this room. This says a lot about who you are and your interest in stepping into leadership and continue to move Gaston County forward. So thank you for your role in that. Just a little bit about me. I've been at the chamber for 16 years. And I've been in this role for 9, and so again, it's a privilege to work kind of in that cross sector of business, government, education, nonprofit, community. So thank you again for the opportunity this morning.
All right, Yaidee, you want to start with the presentation?
so why are we here? I'm gonna stand up because I'm short. All right, so just a little bit of history of why we're here, because I think it's important for you all to hear exactly what brought us to this point. So in 2010, I mentioned earlier that we had, obviously, you all know, recession. But in 2010 to about 2012, we saw massive amounts of jobs leaving, young people from 20 to 44 were leaving our community. You could see our loss of jobs was over 45,000 in our region, which was incredibly powerful to experience. So we realized that some things needed to change. And so the first little nugget that I'll talk about is Innovate Catawba. And Lindsay was with the chamber at the time when we kind of started working on some of this. So Innovate Catawba was a concept that started countywide through business leaders, the chamber, the Catawba County EDC, all of the local governments and municipalities came forward and said, we need to get together, something's got to change, we've got to be able to start doing something. It was over 100, they tentatively said, you know, we need to get at least 100 people, but it was well more than that. Hundreds of community and business leaders got together, and that kind of became the starting point, because what happened is our city council, our leadership in the City of Hickory said, we need to do something too. We were the largest city in our region, and we were the largest job provider, but we knew we were losing everything. And so what could we do to try to make that help? And so we wanted to increase the jobs in our community. We saw a decline in the furniture industry, things were moving overseas. We needed to try to do some kind of revitalization. So we did some community engagement. We brought in some different partners, trying to ask what do they need, what do they see. We did some steering committees. We went and visited other communities to see what the ones that had some challenges and how they came about. So some examples were Greenville, South Carolina, Durham, North Carolina. We went to Asheville. We went to Charlotte. We also went to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Apparently in the 90s, there was a really bad reputation for Chattanooga, and they had completely turned themselves around. And so we wanted to try to do the same. And those are just to name a few of the many cities that we went around to go and visit. And we took our city council, and then we also had a committee of community leaders that also participated in it as well. We ended up engaging over 500 people in just community input meetings alone, not counting the rest of our conversations. And then one of the things that we started working on was what we called our Inspiring Spaces plan. It was basically a master plan of all of our master plans, but then it incorporated all the new growth opportunities, and that led to our bond referendum. So when we were talking about the bond referendum, it was so incredibly important that we had the private businesses behind us, because once it got to a certain point, obviously local governments aren't allowed to talk about a bond referendum. And so we really needed to have that partnership. And so we had actually one of the businesses that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, Transportation Insight, helped lead the way along with several other community members and some of our city council members to kind of start that initiative with the private businesses working together to kind of educate why we needed the bond referendum. You can see over here to the side, we tried to help educate everybody that it's not just the bond money, that we were going to need to do other things. So we needed new business investments, we needed philanthropy, of course there's fees, and then as many grants as possible. We actually, over a 10-year period, this is just an aside, about a week ago, were like, how many grants have we gotten in the last 10 years? And it's been over $226 million in grants that we have gotten, state and federal. We've really worked hard on trying to do what we could. So we got the $40 million passed, and in a community that is incredibly conservative and did not want to do any kind of tax increases, that's a huge statement, because that was the public saying that they wanted to do it. And so what we came out of that was our trail system, which we call the Hickory Trail System, but there's segments. So there's the City Walk, it runs through Union Square, the downtown area, the River Walk, which hugs along the water line. And then it has a bridge, but then there's also an on-land portion. We have our Aviation Walk Aviation Innovation District. So that's the bridge down here that says Hickory, that's over 321, that's part of our Aviation Walk. Union Square that you see over here to the side, we completely redid our downtown. So important nugget and lesson learned on that one. We thought we had done enough engagement with the downtown businesses before we started our planning, right? And looking back, we realized we did not. And so we took the opportunity to pause that. We pulled it out separately and did a whole different design group and company to work with us in the Downtown Development Association to redo the downtown. And when we did that, it brought in a lot more opportunity for their feedback and what they wanted to see for Union Square, but also it gave us an opportunity to hear more about what they needed. So one of the things that we had always heard from the community was the downtown is dead. It closes, too early. Nobody wants to go down there. It's not safe, it's dark, it's this, it's that. There's not enough going on. They're not open on Sundays, they're not open on Mondays. So we did what we could and looked at a lot of rules and regulations. And one of the things that you can see here, I don't know if this will point, right here. So this is a really wide opportunity here for a fire truck to now go this way and be able to put out fires here. That allowed us to be able to open up all of this, because before they could not have as much outdoor dining. So that was one of the changes that we did. We also helped lift up some of the restrictions on how far out they could come. So we as we changed that, they also changed. So now we also provide some entertainment. There's music series that happens. We do movies on the square, that kind of thing. We built stages for that opportunity. But now the private sector has jumped in. And so they're like, we want to do this. We want to do, a few things to bring some more people into our area. And so our downtown, which was pretty much vacant, has now spurred completely. And that's even before we started having some apartments to start getting developed in our downtown, because we didn't have very much apartment complexes or anything in our downtown. So that's been a huge thing. I'm sorry, I saw some looks on faces that seemed interested in that story, so I didn't mean to go down the rabbit hole. Trivium Corporate Center is also part of our bond project. So that's a 50-50 partnership with Catawba County. So everything that goes in is 50-50 and everything that we get out of it is 50-50. It works incredibly well for both parties, and we've been very successful. Lesson learned on that though is we wish we would have went bigger. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We ended up buying the property across the business park to expand, but we didn't have enough faith in ourselves that we were going to need more property, right? We thought the business park was going to be the longest thing to get done with all of our projects, and that ended up actually filling up so quickly that we had maybe 1 or 2 spaces left, and we were like, we're running out. There's no more product. We're going to have to get more space. So, these are lessons learned that, looking back, go bigger. Go ahead. Just have faith in yourself. So this is our downtown Union Square. You can see we completely messed this all up. But what I will tell you is, so this was another opportunity for great partnership. And we're doing this now in another section that is our last segment, called Old Little Road. It's more of our artsy district. We are helping with some of their marketing and making sure people realize they're still open. So because we blocked off their entire frontage and people couldn't see directly to their businesses, we put up banners and signs saying, hey, we're open, this is a safe walkway through here. Make sure we push things out on social media. We worked with the DDA to try to make sure that everything they shared, we shared too, because we didn't want to stop the people from coming. And the businesses were really nervous about a drop, but they didn't see one. It actually increased, and then obviously once it was done, it's been even more successful. This is our Riverwalk. You can see a little bit of before, this is after, this is the bridge. If you're familiar with Greenville, South Carolina's Liberty Bridge, Miguel Rosales designed that bridge. We're very excited about that. He did a phenomenal job, and it's the most popular place to get engaged, apparently. Okay, so this is the aviation walk. We designed this to make sure you can see down here. Here's our baseball stadium. It actually goes up, that's the airport up here, and it walks right past there and goes right along the baseball stadium. It goes across 321, and then there's a park over on the other side. But all of this connects together. So when we did this original bond project, it was about 5 miles of trail that we looked at, but with the 40 million, we expanded it over, and you'll see the numbers here in a little bit. We were able to more than double that in, I think it was 75 million in grants alone to be able to make it like $115 million in investments. This is the historic Ridgeview Walk. It goes into the area of Hickory that's on the southern side that needed a little bit more redevelopment, and they were so excited to be a part of the conversation from the very beginning that they gave us some input as we were doing some of our trail system, and now we're starting to see some growth. And this is the last segment. This is actually a little further along than this, called it's Old Lenore Road, but we call it the Ole Hart Walk. And we see that developing quite a bit with more of the industrial redevelopment side. And then this is our business park. So you can see here, this is what it looked like when we first started. Then it just went to this, and now it's even more. There's something getting ready to come up here, and we've got a few more things that's already filled in. So we had to go to the other side. So continuing the work of our Inspiring Spaces plan itself, we've got our trail segment, we've got the Ole Art Walk that's under construction and almost done, and then we've got Trivium East now. So these are just some examples of private investment that's happened after the public infrastructure. So Transportation Insights, I mentioned them earlier, they were actually thinking about moving out of Hickory. Then they heard what we were planning on doing, and they said, we're gonna keep our headquarters here, and then they actually renovated a mill and completely redid it to make it up new, and it's one of the largest logistical companies in the country. It's not the largest, but it's one of the largest. But they did this before the bonds were even approved, and then they helped us pushing the bond concept. David E. Looper and Company, Delco, you may be familiar with them. They do a lot of work all over the area. They invested in the first apartment complex it was right across from City Hall. It was 100 units. Once that happened, they saw the City Walk Trail was across the road from them, and they were like, we want to make the treatments around us similar to that. We want to attract people to be able to go over and use it. The businesses in Trivium Corporate Center, one of them came because they loved our mountain bike trails and loved how much investments we did in it, and that was what sold it to them, was this community is really investing in itself and we want to be here. We've got a couple of other small businesses that have moved into the area, and then this one that I just wanted to highlight, I actually had brunch there on Sunday. If you're ever in Hickory, it's really great. It's called North Hickory Market. You can see this is the end of the City Walk right here, and then on the other side over here is where the Old Lenore Road is, so they're right in the intersection, and you can see how lively it is already, and so they took that jump in investment, and it paid off. So just a quick note, property taxes then and now. Before the bonds, so earlier in the year of 2014, our property tax was at 50 cents. We had not had an increase in like decades. We shared publicly that we were expecting to go up either 8 cents or 10 cents, with the vote, and we weren't sure exactly how much we would need. Over the years, we've raised it up slowly in our general obligations bond. We never raised it over 10 cents. In fact, we only went up to, I think it was 6 cents. And that was because of the fact that we had the 2024 revals, but then also the community development that was happening. Exactly, the tax base increased. So because we did that slowly, we were able to see that growth at the same time. So we were able to keep our current tax rate is at 46 cents. So you can see it's lower than what it was when we started. So one of the things that we heard when we did this was, how do you know it's gonna work? Well, first of all, we didn't, but we did not want anybody to know that. We had no idea that it was not gonna work at all, but we told ourselves it's gotta work, because there was nothing else. We had nothing left at all, so we had to do it. So you can see here, we actually did in 2019, we did a goal of by 2035, we wanted to hit a certain number of private investment. That number was 500 million. You can see we're over $1 billion now in private investment. And I'll say these numbers are just on a half mile from the trail system and Trivium Corporate Center. That's not counting the growth that we've seen throughout Hickory, and also that which is outside of the trail system, but also what we've seen in Catawba County. Absolutely, because Catawba County has also grown, as has the entire region. So we've increased in jobs, we've increased in housing, so all of our numbers in our goals have, it's been great. But you can see we took the 40 million and now it's 115 million. So takeaways from that, we've had a vision, we had great leadership, we had community and private sector support, we had grants, and we had a lot of patience because I told you 2014 and you hear it's 2026 and we're almost done. So what are we doing for the future? So as we've been working through some things, we wanted to increase so this is actually from our current budget for this year that just got the first approval, and we'll have our second one hopefully it's tonight actually. So we are increasing our street resurfacing budget from 1 million to 2 million. And then our plan is to go up to 4 million by 27, 28. Well, the reason why is because we're seeing all that growth happening all over, the roads needed. We just never took the time to stop and invest in the resurfacing. And the more it was there, the worse it was getting. We've also increased our sidewalk budget. Obviously, as you get more development, you need more connections. And then we continue to put investments into water and sewer lines. So with the trail system, one of the things that we did was everywhere that the trail went, we looked at how old the lines were in that area, and while we were digging things up anyway, let's go in and replace it. Let's go in and assess, is this area likely and projected to grow? Do we need to get a bigger line in that area to help serve more people? And then the most important one that I can highlight that our city manager wanted to make sure you all heard is we had to update our laws and ordinances and other rules and regulations to accommodate the growth needs. So there's a lot of old rules in ordinances and charters and everything else. And you know, our land development code is another thing that we've started looking at. So our focus now is Hickory 2050. So we're looking at, okay, we've got to make sure this is updated. We're focusing on resurfacing. We're trying to make sure all of our connections are safe. We are investing in our airport. So if you get an opportunity in Hickory, come see our new aviation museum that just opened up last month. It's fantastic, but it now gives us an opportunity to be able to update our terminal building and have some opportunities for commercial flights to be coming out. Somebody mentioned you'll probably hear about AI. They were absolutely right. So we're looking at all the innovative ways that we can do things over the next few years to help provide a better service for the community. And then we're focusing on water and sewer resiliency because that's our bread and butter, and we know that, right? The City of Hickory is not the county seat, but over the years, you know, times change. There's industry that leaves and comes, and train was very popular, and so Newton is the county seat, but we focused a lot on the resources that we had, and we're right there on the water. So some takeaways: know what makes your community special and highlight it. I think Lindsay mentioned that a little bit earlier. Local government. So this is from Lindsay, and I love this statement. Local government prepares the soil for businesses to plant the seeds so that the community can reap the harvest. And what better way to say that? Because we need all of you together to be able to do the things that we do. What's good for one is good for it's great for everyone. I will say, so while Hickory stepped out and did things, we started seeing other communities doing the same thing, not just in Catawba County, but in our entire region. Morganton, Lenore, everybody. They just started going, okay, we can do this. We see that they're doing it, we need to be doing it too. Plan ahead, prepare for your capital projects and investments, and review the rules and growth opportunities. Talent recruitment strategies, I know the Chamber is working very hard on that, because as you're growing, you want to be able to make sure you can keep people and sustain them. Embrace your resources and lean into your strengths. Okay, and with that, we will go to questions.
Well, thank you, Yaidee, for that. And I took some notes, and hopefully you all weren't panicked and said, oh my gosh, we don't do any of this. We do a lot of this. Municipalities, we went through, I finished up a year ago, the Gaston 2040 vision for the community. So for me, I think this is now just a call to action. We don't need necessarily another plan. We need to go enact what we've said we need to do, and collectively. But it was just interesting as Yaidee was going through that, just investments, talking about roads, and since City of Gastonia is right here at the first table, there was a bond campaign a couple of years ago for $75 million worth of road work, and that's being instituted. So repaving, improving intersections, sidewalks, really around quality of life, but also just the ability to move. And I know that there's likely nobody in this room that is thrilled with the traffic situation in Gaston County, but I will tell you, it's just not going to get demonstratively better. Growth is going to continue to challenge that. And so I think this holistic approach that Hickory took with trails and connections and industrial and downtowns and residential is absolutely the appropriate approach, and Gaston is doing that across the county. And I think it's also a really great point that there's a unique nature in all of these towns in each of our counties, and everyone doesn't have to look the same, but these principles can be the same. And so this is not a conversation just about Hickory, it's any town in Gaston or Catawba, and how do we take these values and these principles that they use to guide their work and implement them here. So utilities and roads, doing that ahead of time, that's an amazing art to be able to get ahead of the growth. Sometimes the roads and utilities drive the growth, so without it, you wouldn't have the growth. So is growth good, bad? It's a constant dialogue we have to have with the public, with municipalities and with businesses on what's the right amount of expenditure, right? So they talked about raising taxes, and I know in today's world that is just something that we don't want to talk about, but the way those increases in revenue were used to invest in the community. And I can't say that strongly enough. If there's an investment that gets a much higher return, that's a good deal for taxpayers. And so I think we can do a better job as businesses to rally around the needs that we have to drive the appropriate growth for the future. So that was really a great setup. Thank you, Yaidee, for doing that. And congratulations on the great work. And I do think there's a lot of power in believing in yourself. And Gaston we're coming out of the melees of woe is us. 1972 was the highest crime rate in NAFTA in the 90s, and hopefully we're out of that, and we can see that there's a lot of opportunity in Gaston, and we can make positive things happen in the future, especially if we can collaborate on this. So, Lindsay, talk about collaboration, since you have a county-wide purview, and we were discussing this a little bit before we started. How do you engage all of the county in these growth initiatives, and especially the business community?
I thought Yaidee's title for her presentation was incredibly appropriate, public-private partnerships in our story, because really it was the epicenter of what has transpired over the last decade. We've recognized as a community that business and and government have to work together. I think sometimes, and if I can say this, sometimes local government has an inaccurate view of their role in shaping the future of our community. And what I mean by that, I feel like they take on too much of the burden, and truly, the private sector has shared ownership and has to invest in the future of the community. We understand what we need, right? We need talented workers, right? We need great infrastructure. We need a great quality of place that we can recruit great talent. We can also continue to thrive and live our own lives. But all of those issues I just mentioned cannot be achieved by one sector alone. It truly takes a vested interest of the private sector alongside of local government, education, nonprofit community to drive forward progress. And so if you hear anything from me, or if you hear nothing from me, hear this, the fact that you have a role in continuing to shape the future of your community. And our story really started with understanding the stark realities that we were facing, but at the same time, inventorying our economic opportunities. And so utilizing data to drive, kind of light that spark to see the urgency, but also see the opportunity ahead, was really what started this forward momentum. And then creating collaboration and creating those, or convening those groups, whether it's focus groups or interviews, or to help collectively determine what solutions and strategies that we should implement to help achieve the goals that we're setting ahead of us. And that buy-in, that shared outcome, that shared ownership that's created through a process like that, like Innovate Catawba or like the Inspiring Spaces project that happened concurrently, really was what started that forward momentum, and honestly what contributed to the buy-in for the bond referendum. The business community really got behind that, and that served as the tipping point to move this forward. And so you, in your own right as business leaders, you're influential and your voice carries weight. And so if you can speak up alongside of your elected officials, alongside of your local government representatives and leadership, it creates a really powerful kinetic force to accomplish whatever it is you set before you. And that's certainly what happened with us. And then one more thing I can add. Through this collective process, so we always say, Grandma has that secret recipe, right? The one that she doesn't share with anybody else. And no one wants Grandma's recipe to be lost, because it's really special, generational. And I think for us, that secret sauce has been that collaboration, and that, of course, we don't always agree, and we can have that civil debate, but at the same time, it's really created something special that our community has been able to leverage. And so through this all, the bond projects and all the great things that have come out of the ground physically, I think the most powerful thing we've gained is trust amongst the private sector and public sector.
I think one point that you mentioned before we got started was the beginning of all this process. Somebody asked, maybe it was you, Lindsay, asked the folks in the room, so who's the most influential group in the community? And the business leaders pointed to the municipalities pointed to the business leaders. So some of that might be, well, we've got all these problems, they just need to fix it. And the point there is that it's a we issue, or the future will still come, but it won't be as bright if we don't work together. So Meg, you've had a great experience in this region in land planning. You have experience here in Gaston, clearly experience up in Hickory. What are some things that you see that we should really kind of lean into here in Gaston?
I think that's okay, come on. All right, I think that's a great question. Like I said before, sometimes you have to be a little bit on the outside to see what's special on the inside of a place that you all see every day and maybe don't notice anymore. So I think some of the things that I mentioned before, you've got a lot of natural assets, you actually have a lot of historic assets, and you also have, as part of that, your downtowns. you have a lot of downtowns. And I think you can leverage all of that for an experience, to deliver an experience here. And so I think one of the things that this community can think about, and this audience totally gets the idea of a brand story, right? You really know that when you're building brand loyalty, that that story you're telling reinforces the identity, reinforces your brand, and helps people connect with that brand. Well, the same is true with communities. So whether you're at the planning stage or the implementation stage and delivering these experiences, all of that storytelling can come through your planning phase and your design phase. And so the reason I say that is because when you think about that, that's the kind of commitment you're trying to build from your community, not just with your businesses, but what the whole experience is here. So I'll walk you through that, just thinking about when you're going through a planning process, you're telling the story of the place first to know where you've come from. And that vision for the future is also a story. It's that aspirational vision of where you're headed and building that buy-in as you go along. That's an important piece of the story. But then as the community evolves, what those experiences are and the places that support those experiences also have to tie into that brand. So when we were doing the Inspiring Spaces Master Plan, the brand at the time people had really locked into was the life well crafted. So we saw it in the Convention Visitors Bureau saying meetings well crafted, and businesses saying events well crafted, or whatever the case may be. Well, we said that needs to show up in the public spaces too. So however you're delivering that story, it needs to resonate. And why that matters is because first, people need to be able to connect with that story, and when they can connect with it, they feel that sense of place and sense of belonging. And then you start to build that commitment to community. And then there's that interest in, well, how do we continue on that same path with this shared vision of a better future? And then it starts to morph into conversations about how do we create a complete community here? So in our case, it was bringing businesses to to areas along the trail system, but also bringing them to Trivium. It was also bringing App State to the community. So that idea that, wait a minute, I live here, this is my community, I'm proud of this community, I need to be able to think about it in terms of, I don't want to be driving all these places where spending happens outside of the community. And also, that tax base, you want to be able to bring that to the community. So as Lindsay and Yaidee have mentioned, that's a big part of your recruitment strategy. So all of that comes into play. So you start with the story and commit to it.
That's a great point. Storytelling is so powerful, and remember Steve's doing a great job with the GBA and storytelling and the communities, and just elevating the awareness of the reality of Gaston County and the opportunities here. There you are. I do want to mention, so we chose Catawba to participate in this. What I didn't want to do is have Charlotte and Mecklenburg sitting in here and people think, oh my gosh, the scale of them is so different. That's crazy. There's no correlation. But actually, Hickory, to compare city to city, they're the largest city in Catawba County, and they're about half the population of Gastonia, the largest municipality in Gaston. And population is about 2/3 Gaston in Catawba. So this is a smaller by population standpoint community that really rallied around these big ideas. So we can do this. This is not a scale issue. I think it's just a desire to come together issue. And I really love the fact that Trivium, the industrial park, has that trail connection to it, and that's just not something I naturally think of. How do you connect to an industrial park? The EDC has done a fabulous job with the most recent one, Apple Creek, and the Gaston Tech Park, and even Southridge in Bessemer City, and maybe bringing the connection physically to them can show that there's a relationship, because it's difficult to build a relationship with many of these businesses because most now are international, and they have somebody that maybe is the North American headquarters or plant manager, and there's just not this natural way for them to get engaged in the community. And that's unfortunate, because the businesses that were raised here, born here, started here a century ago have changed. So we don't have as much of that corporate influence that we used to have. And so if there's a way we can take away from this meeting, how do we physically connect to those business parks? That might be a really great component for us. So Yaidee, before we get to audience questions, I know you mentioned one thing that you, I would say, wish you had done was believe in yourself and be bold. But upon reflection, now 12 years into this effort, what are some things that you say, gosh, this is what we would have done differently had we known?
So definitely going bigger was the biggest part. But one of the biggest things was remembering the patients. So this is over 15 years that it took us to get there. And what we forgot along the way was every community that we went and visited that had turned everything around, they told us the same thing. This is a long process, but you gotta stay on it, stay the course, stay patient, don't let up, don't give up, because it took them more than 10 years. Some of them it took 20 years. So what we realized was we needed to make sure that we had a lot of patience in that. And then we do wish that we had started looking sooner at some of those rules and regulations that we have. So some of the things that's happened over the years, I mentioned how we're increasing our funding in our resurfacing. Well, with the development that happens in areas that has not been there before, because as you all know, there might be more of a country atmosphere in an area, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of houses that get developed there, right? So suddenly the streets change. There's utility gets busted up into the road. The people that live in that area are driving through there, and we're seeing that we're having to try to resurface that. And that's a large strip, and how can we afford to do that? Because we've got all these other areas that are, in a high priority. So one of the things that we did was about 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, we implemented a rule that developers needed to work with us on utility cuts. Because that was something that needed to come into helping us with because what was happening was those that would come in and do the utility lines, they just left the hole there, and so when people were driving by, they were hitting it and messing their tires up and that kind of thing. So we worked on doing a new rule on that, and everybody knows now when they come in, we change that. The other thing we've done, because I know you had asked the question about how do you know that, how did you see the signs of the growing and the developing? So first of all, we started seeing track builders, and that's something that's very common here, but for us, we never saw one. So and it was like, oh my gosh, they're actually coming. When we have homegrown builders in our area, but it was a huge thing for us to start seeing that, so we could tell that the tide was starting to change. But also we started having conversations with NCDOT. So we were like, hey, we're starting to get inquiries on development happening in this area and that area. How can we align our projects timing-wise to help with that growth that's coming? And also, while we're at it, because if you do it ahead of time, you usually have a better chance of getting this to happen. Can we get some kind of a multi-purpose pathway and participate in some kind of opportunity there along your roadway so that we can provide an additional connection? And so those are the kinds of conversations that we've started having. We wish we would have done it sooner, but lessons learned, we figured it out. So as we're starting to do that, we try to make sure that we increase those sidewalk opportunities.
That's great, thanks. And sooner usually means less expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about projects. Projects typically have an end date. I would argue city building never has an end date. If you think about the downtowns that we have here in Gaston County, 75 years ago, they were thriving in a different way. And then the world changed multiple times. It's going to continue to change. So don't think that, if we just have this plan and we get it done, that's it. Something else will come up. So how do you stay competitive, really, in a global world for the talent that was mentioned? And that's a critical issue. Well, talent's likely also going to be attracted here due to quality of life. Well, the quality of life includes preparing for growth. So it's just It's a very systems-oriented approach to this. So the work is never done. Vivian, Logan, it's on you for the next 50 years. I'm out at that point. But let's open it up to the audience to get your questions of this esteemed panel.
Okay, so Joe Bell just left, so we're going to start with someone. Introduce yourself, who you are, who you represent.
Thanks, Steve. Jim Gallagher, City of Gastonia, Ward 3. My question centers on government, and Yaidee, this is really for you. First off, love your bridge over 321 where it says Hickory. Beautiful job. Excellent. The other thing is the river walk. When I was coming down 321 going up, I didn't see any signs where we could get off to get on there, but it's beautiful. That bridge is really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll work on the signage.
This is the thing I have. Do you have something on the books to encourage downtown businesses that are vacant and nothing going on inside them? Do you have a carrot and stick approach, or a law where empty buildings get some type of tax or minimum charge for water and sewer and electric, or some type of penalty that increases as the space doesn't get rented after 6 months? See, we have an investor downtown that we have 63 downtown buildings, and he owns 23, and he's holding them on for investments. Nothing, that's his business model. And is there something that you have done in your business?
I don't have any cashiers and credit card here.
So that's a really great question, because we had a similar situation. So he's no longer doing that, but there was a gentleman in our downtown that owned a majority of the downtown. He kept it, but he also rented it out, and so the pricing, as we understood, was really high for some of the businesses, and so some of them were starting to leave our area and go into the region somewhere else, whether it was in our county or whether it was just outside. But what we were hearing was, hey, it's this business, this property owner. Because we do have our Downtown Development Association, we did work very heavily with her, and we have a liaison from, it's our Community Development, Economic Development Director that's in-house, David Leonetti. He worked very closely with the DDA, and we tried really hard to make him understand, hey, you're keeping the growth from happening. It's a hard conversation because that is his property. But what's happened is as he's seen the investments that we've done with the whole revitalization, and the investments we've done with entertainment, and the investments that we've done with the entire trail system, one of the biggest things that we said was we wanted to make everything lit up. So that was how we changed the feel of the downtown to feel more safe, was light it up and put more lights out. As we did that, he realized, so I guess it was more like a carrot, not the stick. He realized they care enough about what they're doing, and he kind of started letting go. And so he started selling some of his property, but also those that he has, he doesn't charge as much now. And that's taken a long process. We have engaged him multiple times. Anytime there's been some development issues on anything that he's had questions about, but we took the extra time to really sit down with him repeatedly. And I think that relationship building was the biggest catalyst that changed it. That's probably the best advice I could give is sometimes just trying to sit down, and it may not go well for quite some time, but eventually you get there, and so we finally got there. It was a long process too.
Okay, we got one in the back.
Hi, I'm Steph Newman, Executive Director for the Gaston Arts Council. You touched a little bit on the art walk that you're currently building. So our counterpart, Arts Culture Catawba, shout out to Ingrid. So they currently receive an investment of, I think it's around at least $1.25 per person from about 7 of the 9 municipalities in Catawba. We currently don't see any of that in Gaston. Shout out to Cramerton for being our first municipal arts partner though. And so I guess I was gonna ask, could you speak a little bit onto like how you see the value in that arts investment, the art walk, investment into Arts Culture Catawba, and then also as you're kind of building out that infrastructure, seeing arts as a vital resource and infrastructure part to your regional growth.
So Art, that's a great question. And yes, Ingrid is fantastic. We're very fortunate to have her in our community. Arts is a big thing because we have, there's actually, we call it the SALT block, science, art, literature, together, yeah, SALT block. But it's an old high school that got renovated that actually has our science center in it. It also has our Museum of Art. It has our library, so we're one of 11 cities in the state that has our own library system. And so our main library is actually on that campus. So we have a great partnership with the arts community. But additionally, there's we have elements of art through our Public Art Commission that are sprinkled throughout the city. We have an additional interactive map that you can do an art trail and find all the pieces for fun. Murals that are everywhere. The downtown really highlights that. It's like, hey, go spot the Charlie Chaplin that's, where's he at? And you have to find it and take a picture or whatever. And so, these are the kind of things that these are the kind of things that we try to encourage, and we try to make them fun. But we also see them as those are reasons for people to come to those areas, right? So that's in its own way an economic driver too, because as people are coming to the downtown, what are they likely to do? They're likely to shop, they're likely to eat. Or as somebody's going into the arts district area, what are they likely to do? They're likely to shop, they're likely to eat. Whether they're riding a bicycle and they're like, let me pull in here and check this place out. Whatever it is, it's that opportunity to grab people's attention, for them to take a picture behind or in front of something for that moment, and then they see something else to engage and spend in the community. So we see that as a definitely an economic opportunity.
Just a note as well, the Ollie Art Walk actually started by private sector members. So there were several businesses along Old Lenore Road that were arts focused, whether they were furniture retailers or they were glass blowers or they were furniture makers. And so there was a concentration of businesses that really kept meeting with the city on a regular basis to say, hey, we really think there's an opportunity here for a new budding district that can be focused around the arts, kind of kitschy, eclectic space in a gateway into the downtown. And so again, I really just want to urge you as business leaders to work alongside of your local government to really cast visions that could be capitalized on. And that's a perfect example of where the arts community worked alongside of local government to make something like that happen. And now it was incorporated in the bonds, and now it's been funded, and now it's becoming a reality. And more businesses are popping up, art galleries are popping up around that corridor because the vision was casted. So seeing opportunity, leaning into your strengths, casting a vision, and then bringing the right people around the table.
Speaking of private industry sparks.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Casey. In the slide that you encouraged her to go back to, the one with the whole list, at the very top was talking about knowing what makes your community special. And then you also mentioned knowing where you're coming from and knowing where you're headed. I moved here just 1 year ago, so I'm learning everything about Gaston County and Gastonia and what's the difference. And because I wasn't here on the west side of the state. My question, I guess, is how, I feel like we are struggling to find our identity. There's so much that we've come from, and I'm not exactly sure. We've done some brainstorming in our focus groups. We've gone to other towns to see how they really maybe encapsulated that idea of their brand identity. It feels very disjointed to me, and maybe how would you encourage us to solidify that and really move forward and lean into exactly who it is we represent?
I think
that's a good question. Okay. Am I now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that's a really good question. You have a lot of opportunities here, so sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming when you think about what you could latch onto, right? And it has to be your own set of features. So going back to the question that Pat was asking, I mean, Gaston County has a really cool system. I'm going to focus first on the natural resources and then dive down into your built environment. But your natural resources include your monadnocks, which are your mountains like Kramer, Spencer, and Crowders. And back in the day, we were talking about how cool it would be to have an experience where a trail system you could actually make that loop. That predated the Carolina Thread Trail. And it came into the conversation with Carolina Thread Trail when we were talking about how we literally weave communities together. So I was fortunate to be part of the conversation about how that name was selected, and it was a nod to the textile industry. But Gaston County figured prominently in those conversations because we referred back to the idea with the Monadnock connections. But we also acknowledged the textile history here, and the weaving communities together was the thought, well, it's not just a natural resource experience, it's also how do we connect these towns and make it something. So I think that those are the kinds of things that you can look at, not just in your individual towns or the street that you're on where your business is located, but instead that more global look at the county and the region and what are you delivering. So exactly those kinds of things that are unique to the town you're in or Gaston County, you've got to be able to pinpoint those things and figure out how to literally weave those stories together. We were talking about it and how cool Gaston County is and thinking, how cool would it be to make a weekend out of Gaston County where you can go do these hikes and things, but you can also do downtown hopping. And yeah, so I think that's the thing is work with each other, because I think if you talk to each other as towns, I'm pointing to all of you because I'm sure you're dispersed around these towns, and ask each other what's special, because I think you can land on what that story is and what that experience is that the collection of towns can deliver, but you have to sort of hear it from your next door neighbor or somebody outside who's come to visit. So pay attention to what you're saying about each other. And now we're in a world of social media, so people are making TikToks and Instagrams and actually saying things about our communities that we didn't know was cool. And so I think you can look to those resources too and start to hone in on what that is and make sure that it's a connected experience that's all complementary across it. And by the way, your public spaces deliver that. Your businesses deliver it and can reinforce and promote, but your public spaces are what support the actual activities. That's what gives people the vantage point from which they take in the place and formulate their opinions. So we've gone from people saying, yeah, I'm from Hickory, to, yeah, I'm from Hickory. And the inflection is totally different, but it's because these perspectives of what now people are experiencing in Hickory, it's like totally shifted the attitude. So I think you guys, you're not far from there. You can get there, but use each other to see what you're saying about each other and about the place. And I think that story will start to emerge, and then you'll know how to deliver it in a physical placemaking environment.
A lot of little gems in the crown, Casey.
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Brett Buchanan, Economic and Workforce Development at Gaston College. Kind of have a unique perspective, born and raised and still live in Catawba County for over 50 years, but worked in Gaston County for about 11. Got a unique understanding of how some of these things work, so I think of Trivium. So my question is going to be for Lindsay. I got my wife in the car seat riding by, and she is not the biggest fan of when Trivium's being built to what it is, and being around Donnie Hicks so much and explaining her the benefit of an industrial park, not just et cetera, et cetera. My question is, what type of communication have you done for things like that for the general public, and what could you do as an improvement? Because one of my thoughts was, you have people in their pockets. I live in Newton. What's going on in Hickory? Couldn't tell you. I only go out there and got to Lake Hickory. What could you do for the localized individuals that live around the area that want to talk about what they think is going to happen versus what is a reality? They can get quick access to information.
Great point. So just a point of clarification, our chamber, we actually have our great partners at the Economic Development Corporation that do an incredible job on industrial recruitment. So our EDC works really closely with our local governments to recruit industry and also to develop product like the Trivium Corporate Center. And I'm unaware of the communication strategy. Yaidee, you might be able to speak to that, but I think there's just some good nuggets that you raised that really could make us better. Like you said, the social media chatter sometimes can be quite loud, and controlling that narrative and keeping it positive, and also helping debunk myths and incorrect information is really vital. So you want to speak to that, Yaidee?
Yeah, so one of the things that we focused heavily on is making sure that people understand, one, when we bring in a business into the business park, if there's an incentive that happens, this is what that is. We do have a little point where we say, hey, if you're gonna bring the business in here and you wanna get an incentive from the City of Hickory and Catawba County, we'd like it to be maybe 10% higher than what the county salary is for the jobs, because we wanna try to increase that job pay, because one of the things that's happened is Catawba County is a lot higher than the rest of our region, but as a region, the number is lower. And so we want to be able to help increase that. And so we do communicate that, as well as just trying to make sure that people understand the more business industry that does come into the area, the more that helps. I showed you earlier the property tax, right? So when there's a benefit of investments from the actual commercial development that goes on, that helps the residential side. So we're able to still provide all of those high levels of service without necessarily having to always go up on our property tax. I mean, sometimes you do, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there are times where it helps to alleviate having to go up so much. And so while I know that it does provide more jobs and more opportunities, there's a great partnership with Trivium Corporate Center and the local community college for workforce development. And so that gives younger people and others that are trying to further educate themselves that straight line opportunity and streamline job opportunity. It does provide a lot more to our region, and so we try our best to really kind of communicate that, both ourselves and the county, in sharing and highlighting why that's so important.
I will add there, I think we as chambers, GBA as well as the Chamber of Catawba County, have a tremendous role in educating and informing the business community as to where we're headed. So I think, to your point, ensuring that at least the business leaders understand the importance of these investments, and also how we're controlling it. I call it smart growth, not growth at all costs, right? You don't want to lose what makes you unique and special just for the sake of growth. And so I think controlling that pace, ensuring strategic investments are made, and then informing the business leaders as to why those investments are needed to continue to really what's in it for me conversation, making sure that we are communicating that. But yeah, the general public, it's definitely a challenge.
Hey, Jay Connor. So one of the things y'all talked about was the Ollie Art Walk. I just want to give a shout out to that. Back in 21, my wife and I went up there. It was before any of that started, and the local businesses were doing their own thing, and they had promoted each other, right? That picture you had of North Hickory, Mark, directly behind there is one of my favorite stores in Hickory. It's called Vintage Blue. We actually go by, if I'm going through Hickory or going anywhere that way on 40, we make it a point to stop by there. But my question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg with downtown? Because y'all did a great job of revitalizing that area with the Union Square, making everything look a lot better. And did you get the businesses in there because of that? Or were the businesses already there and that just helped drive the business to the businesses?
So it really was both. It was really interesting because painting the picture of the vision first is what got businesses like on a large scale, Transportation Insights, but on a very small scale, some of the other like restaurants that wanted to be there, or the upgrades that were being done to some of the restaurants. So there was a little bit of that, and then there was business owners witnessing, oh, they actually made that investment, and so it started to ramp up, and then ideas about what should be there also informed the actual improvements, like what actually got built was informed by some of that engagement, like the Downtown Association, but it was sort of that back and forth, and it has just grown and multiplied over time. So I was telling Lindsay and Yaidee about a conversation I was having with one of the business owners, and she said she saw the chain link go up and the square getting torn up, and she said, I'm opening a restaurant. And she did, and it's been one of our most successful restaurants downtown. And so with each little improvement, we're seeing more people jump on board, so the confidence is growing. But it was just an idea on paper first, and some of the pioneers of the group were the ones that jumped on when it was still just on paper, and then the bond referendum came along. So talking about it and sharing that vision is what helps to get that buy-in. I think also the community engagement piece of it, there was enthusiasm generated around it, so it wasn't just what the city was doing, but the fact that the community was talking about the opportunity. So that promotion really mattered as well as the whole thing was unfolding. Yeah.
I also want to add, I think someone mentioned earlier how do you know what's next? Someone said something. So the other aspect, I think, the greatest enemy of good or success or the greatest enemy of great is good, right? When you have success, it's real easy to sit here and get to tell the story of where we've been, and then think and be complacent and you can't allow complacency to set in, is what I'm trying to say. So we've actually done it again. So our board recognized the fact that we need a group that's responsible for leading a regular cadence of community visioning and looking at it from a regional scale. And so our foundation has really been activated as that body that drives that regular cadence of visioning. So we just wrapped up a 2-year process where we convened over 350 cross-sector leaders to develop a talent strategy, right? Because talent competitiveness and economic competitiveness go hand in hand. And so, again, we're trying to continue to cast forward what are those barriers that we need to eliminate for workforce, and how can we continue to lean into quality of place, and in addition to creating partnerships for career pathways. So I think we can't just stay where we are. We've got to continue to move ahead.
Time for one more question? Burning question?
Okay, Franklin here. So quick question. So, you're bringing all these people down to these great new spaces, right? And, one of the challenges I think that a lot of communities in general have is both from a practical perspective, from a zoning and development perspective, and then just an education perspective is parking. So did you guys have any challenges from local businesses worried about losing parking, people worried about coming and not being able to park, or zoning and development problems challenges that you had? And how did you guys get some wins out of that? How did you get everybody to come down and just do it?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think that everybody thinks that their parking challenges are unique to them, and we see it over and over and over again, right? So now we go downtown, we get so excited about a parking problem. It's like, if I can't park right where I'm going, it's awesome. I love that kind of hustle bustle down there. But there was a huge hurdle to overcome in those early conversations when we started talking about making changes to Union Square and what does all of this mean and attracting. And so the downtown group was, like in any downtown, it's that question of, well, if I can't park right in front of my business where I work, it's a problem. My customers need to be able to park right in front of where I am. So it's an evolution. So we've accommodated parking. There's still parking there, surface parking within Union Square, and we upgraded all the on-street parking. And so there's that available. But the whole experience, one of my colleagues that's a market analyst that does a lot of retail work said there's a shift. When you leave your house and say, I'm just going to, like in the case back in the day, it was just Ella Blue or just the tap room or something like that. That's an experience that is not solid. You don't want that. You want the kind of experience that when people leave their house, they're saying, I'm going downtown, they find a parking space and they don't decide where they're going until they get out of the car. Because they know that the whole experience is gonna be, what is it like when I get there? I'm gonna decide, because the space I landed in, we're gonna go to this place first and that place second. So you get this linger longer kind of experience, and it becomes less about the parking and more about whether or not you're going to downtown and for a period of time. And so I think when that shifts, but it's the public piece of that is making sure that the public spaces are the glue. That's that cohesive space that that make it a good experience. But then the businesses, it's like you go to any great destination downtown, you might walk 1,000 feet before you blink twice and not realize it, because the businesses you're passing, the investment in streetscape, the little plazas and pocket parks along the way make it such a great experience. And so that's what the city's been delivering, and the parking becomes a less of an issue. You have to wait that out a little bit, knowing that when you're focused on the experience, the parking will resolve itself. Maybe someday we'll be in a spot where we actually have to charge for parking, or maybe there's structured parking in the distant future. But right now, we're just going through those awesome growing pains of people needing to find some space, but it certainly hasn't hurt businesses in any way. It's actually helped businesses.
So from the city side, in addition to what Meg just said, because we lean very heavily on that, and that's incredibly true, we have also looked at, there's certain areas where we follow it from heat maps. So 3-hour parking in certain areas, and then, you know, obviously you might get a ticket. But then there's some areas that are unrestricted that are a little bit further. We have an interactive map that you can pull that up onto your phone very easily to look at. And of course we have signage everywhere of where the public parking is. But everything's signed, and we do get a lot of, hey, you know, I wanted to be downtown longer than 3 hours, and you know, I got a ticket or whatever. But one, the fees are not incredibly high. But the other thing is again, there's a lot of unrestricted, and if you know where that's at, then it gives you that opportunity. And then we also do the investment every so often to do another parking study. So we're getting ready to have our 4th apartment complex within like a 3-block area. So that's another 100 people that are coming to our downtown soon. So where are they gonna park? And their friends and whoever else. And so we have to stay on top of that, because if there is a change that needs to happen, we wanna make sure that we're prepared and ready. So that goes back to that whole preparing and readiness. We're constantly doing our parking studies.
Yeah, I would add to Meg's comments that sometimes it's just a mindset, and context affects that. So I find that people go to Manhattan and visit New York, they'll walk all day long. When they come back to Gaston County, they've forgotten how to walk, and they just know how to park. So it's contextual, and to your point, if people are saying my destination is downtown, and I'm okay walking around and finding where I want to go, that's different than I need to park right in front of the shop I'm going to, and otherwise, this city's terrible, there's no parking. It's an interesting phenomenon. Well, thank you all for being here today. I do want to recognize Ashley Clark. So I didn't see Ashley behind her there. So Ashley's with LandDesign, and actually helped me with a long conversation about what might be the most effective way to have this discussion. So thank you, Ashley, for helping guide the framework for today. Appreciate everybody here. Appreciate the sponsors. We have the next. So we have actually something at 10 o'clock today for downtown development. Jim Marasso, the Fed Bank building is going to have a grand opening, or a groundbreaking. And then we have several other opportunities to participate with the GBA. We appreciate your support. Hopefully this was informative, and hopefully you're leaving today with something you can think about or do to support the future of Gaston County. I've done said everything I'm supposed to say. Well, and thank you so much to the panelists for coming down from Hickory. This was really great. Appreciate the insights that you brought to us.